Welcome to week 3, Radical Responsibility for Self. I am Hillary Sepulveda Brown, founder of Radical Recovery of Self, spiritual practitioner with New Thought Global, best-selling author, and here to help you release those codependencies and radically reclaim your freedom. Before we get started today, I'd like to do what I love to do every class, and that's starting us with a spiritual mind treatment and invocation. So I invite you to place your feet on the ground, maybe lift your toes and wiggle them out a little bit, and then connect it back down to the earth. Go ahead and close your eyes. I like to bring my palms into a mudra by holding my thumbs together and bringing it down to my sacral, down by my hips and my lap. And as I take a deep breath in, all the way up, maybe I even tense my shoulders. And as I let that go, I relax my body and release the tension away. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhaling in, lifting the shoulders to the ears, making everything super tight, and exhale and release. Again. And in this moment of release, I recognize my responsibility for all things. For I am one with all things. Just like in a symphony, there are many instruments that play a different tune to bring it together. I am the one. I am both the symphony in the oneness that is everything, and I am the instrument playing its solo. You as well are one with me, and I am one with you. And in that oneness, there is recognition of our power. And where there is power, there is great responsibility. And I declare through our unique divine expression of ourselves that we radically reclaim that responsibility for self. I declare right now that the game to shame and blame and guilt others is stopped. I declare right now that we have stopped the blame, shame, and guilt of ourselves in this moment and every moment moving forward, for there is merely perfection in the radical reclamation of our responsibility for self. And in knowing that great responsibility, knowing that power, there is nothing but gratitude to release. Knowing that the power we use to create the chaos is the power we will use and that we use right now in this moment to create the ease, the flow, and the peace within our lives. The financial abundance, the financial wealth, the wealth of love, the wealth of creativity, and the wealth of health. It is already done as I release this into the universe, knowing that my word is one with the divine word. Together we say, and so it is. I truly do. Let me just reaching as I grab over here for another earbud. I truly do believe that we know the omni knowing, right? The forever knowing of all things, for there is oneness, there is connection. Have you ever felt connected to someone you've just met, but you don't know why? And you're like, oh my gosh, we are reflections of each other. That we can take radical responsibility for. So when we take radical responsibility for self, what am I talking about? This is what we're going to be talking about all week. And we're going to do it radically, yo. We're talking about stopping the blame, shame, and guilt game. We're understanding that we are taking responsibility for the choices, decisions, and actions that you make or have made that have led you to this place right here, right now in your life. How does that feel? Oftentimes I call this the oh shit moment. I'm just going to put that out there. We are taking responsibility for the choices, decisions, and actions that we have made that have brought us to this place right here and right now. It's intense, isn't it? Or is it? Truly, it can be, right? When we stop looking outside of ourselves to blame or shame someone else or something else for the situation we find ourselves in, that's where we know we've begun the journey of radical responsibility, right? It's when we stop saying, if they hadn't done this, or if they would have done this, I would be here. If they just would have paid me, I could pay you. If they just would have kept going with their program, I could offer you all the benefits, right? Taking radical responsibility for self is not that. Taking radical responsibility for self is, yes, I take responsibility for believing in this person's word. I take responsibility for thinking that this was going to be completed. Because here's the deal, yo, there's always choice. And so when we're taking radical responsibility for self, we're taking the responsibility for making the choice to be where we are in that moment. The law of divine will is just that. It states that absolute truth is the will of God, or your divine will. These are absolute truths. These are universal truths. We're not talking about, pie in the sky. I'm praying to someone outside of myself. I'm talking about the law of divine will within you. This law works in direct proportion to your ability to direct energy upon universal law by the power of your mind and the conviction of your heart. Divine will has nothing to do with force upon the physical realm. It's influenced by the beliefs within your soul. Your divine will, free will, right? Freedom of choice, free will is yours at all times. It's the understanding that this works in proportion with your belief when how you direct your mind. If you make a business deal and you believe your partner is supposed to pay you out, that is a belief. We take responsibility for our beliefs, right? One of the traits of being codependent is trusting others before we get to know them and understanding we're not aligned because we want them to like us. I've made so many decisions in life and tried to shirk the responsibility on something else. Well, they didn't pay me, so I can't pay you. Well, I can't do this because of this person. If I only could have done this because they could do this. No, the truth is I gave my power away to other people and I have to take responsibility for that. Our emotions are our own. No one can change them or make you feel them in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to read that again, right? Because I want that to sink in. How many times have you said to someone, you're making me feel like, I feel like you said this? Our emotions are our own. No one else can change them, make you feel them in any way, shape, or form. When we are in the power of our own divinity, of our power of ourself, of our free will and choice, we understand it's our responsibility of how we act or react to others, to places, even to situations. This is what we're talking about. So in this step of radical responsibility for self, we're really taking inventory of our free will, where it's harmed us and others, right? This is the first step. We're also going to be taking responsibility for ourselves of where it's benefited us and others, right? Because we don't just get to take responsibility for the good shit, for the bad shit, but we get to take responsibility for the good shit too, right? It's from our thought through universal law into how we live. That means when we're thinking the good thoughts, we experience the good stuff. How do we retrain our brain? Well, we can take it back even, I don't often mention the Bible. There are so many beautiful spiritual works and writings, but this is the most known work and writing. And this is the one that I often come around. People say to me, but Hillary, how can I take responsibility? It's just God's will, right? It's just the way God wants it. Well, I'm here to tell you God's will is your will. And Genesis 1:27 says this. The collective consciousness of God created man in his own image. This verse specifically refers to us humans and thereby teaches us that humans are the image of God in their spiritual, emotional, and intellectual selves. So if we mirror this image of God, we too have the ability to actualize our divinity. Why is this important? Because when we look at the original translation of this verse, it's actually that we are to imitate God, and God is a creator of all things. So if we are to imitate, we are here to create, aren't we? And if we recognize that, we can recognize that our will is divine. How will you use your divine free will? Will you use it to take responsibility for the actions, decisions, and choices you've made? Or will you use that divine free will to choose, whether responsibly or not, to blame others for your life situations? Understanding that we have that free will, our divine will to choose how we move, how we decide, and how we take action in this life also means taking radical responsibility for those divine choices and actions. That we take full responsibility in our acknowledgement of our own divinity. Mm-hmm. For all situations, all expectations, whether met or unmet, that have outpictured within our life, including our emotions. We must take full responsibility in our acknowledgement of our own divinity for all situations, expectations, whether met or unmet, that have outpictured in our life, including, but not excluding, our emotions. Our emotions. Why do I say that? Because there must be a victim to be a perpetrator. This one is where radical recovery of self comes from. I was addicted to my victimhood, yo. That was my everyday thing. I needed to find a situation, a story for someone to blame for life situation, for life not panning out how I expected that it would be, that I would be queen of an island somewhere beautiful. Whatever that may be. What are those expectations? Have you put expectations on a business partner that you feel is victimizing you? When they didn't reach those expectations, did you blame them, or did you take radical responsibility for your own emotions and your own expectations that you placed upon someone else? As my dad would say, the buck stops here. It's not to say you have not been victimized. It's to say that you do not need to wear your victim identity, right? There's a difference to be victimized and to own your victimhood. Let's shift that victimhood into victorship, from victim to victor, because we know for there to be a perpetrator, there must be a victim. Imagine if we all stopped victimizing ourselves. What would the perpetrators do? They would lose control over their power of victimization. So these are the things we're going to be talking about. So I want to ask you now, where have you allowed yourself to be a victim? And this can get deep. Maybe you're thinking, oh, well, Hillary, I'm in an abusive marriage. I was in an abusive marriage for 12 years. I met my first husband when I was 17. I was a victim of domestic violence. But you know what? The radical responsibility for self within me knows I chose to stay in that marriage for 12 years. Am I excusing the actions that were taken by my then spouse? I am not. I've long forgiven him. But I am not the victim of the circumstance. I am the responsible party for staying within the circumstance. Where can you see in your life where you've allowed yourself to be a victim, where you're ready to shift from that victimhood into victor? Where can you see that you've placed blame and shame or fault on others for how your life has turned out? Right? These are the inventory pieces that we're going to be talking about all week. To get started, you can make a list, the big things that come up today, and journal those. We're going to be getting into this into detail, It's going to get intense, but it's also going to be beautiful because not only are you going to take responsibility for those actions and victimhood, but you're going to take responsibility for the championship and being the victor. Your responsibility for all of it. All of it is your responsibility. So we are going to radically take that inventory around it. We are going to radically release those expectations that we have put that others are responsible for us, for our actions, for our decisions. And we're going to be reclaiming that for ourselves and our personal freedom this week. To take the responsibility where maybe it was needed. And with everything going on planetarily, this is powerful. I'm so excited to be on this journey with all of you guys as we take radical responsibility from our life, as we shift from being a victim into the victor, from our old identities and into the divinities. Let it begin. Radical responsibility of self. Go ahead and hit me up in the community. Let's shout out our fellow students that are in class and keeping in the pace. Let's welcome our new members and let's take responsibility for self and our action as we move forward in radical responsibility of self 7-step certification. Love you guys. Peace out. Let's get radical, yo.